Hi everybody, it's Sid from Cool Moviegram, your source for everything about cool movies. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like my videos, comment and do the usual stuff. Get me into the algorithm. And first things first, thank you very much to all those who have pushed me up to 250. I'm in the 250 club now. I mean, that's actually a great, it's a milestone. A month and a half ago or so, I was kind of like, well, a couple of months back, I was just kind of like, wow, I only hit my first 100. Now I've already hit my 250, so I've got 1.5 times more. And I'm kind of glad to see that the channel's kind of like getting more attention, and I'm really glad that the videos are getting noticed. I'm like, hey, just some guy who's making videos off a cell phone and, talking about movies. I mean, just nerding out about them. I guess people do like it. I mean, hey, thank you, As a way of saying thank you to all you awesome people who have subscribed, I am actually doing a giveaway. It's going to be like just a bunch of like random DVDs and whatnot. So it's just stuff that movies that I would want to give away. I'm going to give it away to one of my subscribers. So just let me know in your comments. Okay, who's your favorite action filmmaker? Just let me know in your comments, and I will then do a random selection and send out the package. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. The point of the video is the top 50 action movies. This time around it's movies 35 to 31. And yes, for me, I would say the list is getting better and better. I mean, each movie is actually better than the last, in my opinion. So yeah, it's always great fun to talk about this stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it. '35 is New Police Stories, directed by Benny Chan. It's a 2004 Hong Kong movie starring Jackie Chan, Nicholas Tse, or Che, however you pronounce it in Cantonese, I'm not too sure, Daniel Wu, Andy Yan, and Charlene Choi. Yes, the film stars Jackie Chan as a respected police officer, Chan Kwok Wing, who's gone in the slums and in the dumps after seeing his team get murdered by a band of young criminals who carry out heists just to make a game of actually killing and harming police officers. And after this, he's kind of like turns to alcohol. Then a young police officer named Frank, played by Nicholas Tse, decides to help him and get back into the game. And then as they draw closer, Jackie Chan's character Chan Kwok Wing decides to exact revenge and get the guys who actually killed his team, played by Daniel Wu and Andy Yan. Daniel Wu playing the leader as a young rich kid named Joel, who's kind of not getting the attention from home. Right, what can I say about this film? Now, this came out at the time where Jackie Chan had actually kind of like, he was past his top tier level of movies. I mean, for me, Jackie Chan, as mentioned before on the channel, his top tier films were from 1978 up until 1994. So I'd say around about Snake and Crane Arts Shaolin, all the way up to 1994's Drunken Master 2. Between that time, that's when, up until from there and then, those are like his best movies. And then he did have good movies come out afterwards. I mean, Thunderbolt was fun, Rumble in the Bronx was pretty good, First Strike, Mr. Nice Guy, Who Am I? And then his foray into Hollywood, like Rush Hour, was pretty good. And yeah, and then he had a couple of duds here and there. But then this was his first Hong Kong movie going back after, making a lot of money and having some hits and misses in Hollywood. And this was actually kind of like, just got straight back into it. I mean, he teamed up with Benny Chan once again, who had co-directed 1998's Who Am I? And this kind of was a lot more of a visceral kind of, you could tell that this was a lot much more of a bigger budget movie, but at the same time it had that slap bang action. I mean, it had some great fight sequences, in particular the scenes between Jackie Chan versus Andy Yan. Even Nicholas Tse gets to kind of like flash a few moves here and there, and the action sequences was like just ballistic. I mean, there's great stunt work. I mean, involving the bus, so there was a little hark back into the original police story film, and then also there was some like just really good like some CGI explosions, but then there was also some great stunt work, use of like BMX bikers and extreme sports kind of activities and whatnot, and skateboarding and whatnot, all included, and a great chase sequence throughout the streets of Hong Kong. It's just really cool. I mean, such an awesome movie, like in a way that this is what we wanted as Jackie Chan fans. This is what we were waiting for him to kind of like make once again. This was like one last hurrah. But many people thought we could be like a second wave of maybe top tier Jackie Chan movies. But this was kind of like a great return after seeing him kind of like slip a little and then going to Hollywood and then come back and making a traditional like Hong Kong style action movie. I mean, even when the movie was released, the tagline in the trailer says Jackie Chan returns to his Hong Kong roots. And me was thinking, wow, okay, awesome. And the fact is, this is a lot more of a serious movie in contrast to the previous the original Police Story trilogy and even First Strike. This is not really an action comedy. This was actually a lot more of a serious action movie, and I would say Jackie Chan held his own even in terms of acting. He kind of like played the role effectively enough and was able to convey his emotions. Even when it comes to action, even at the age of 50 when this movie, he was 50 years old, and thinking, wow, he's fitter than a lot of people my age. He's probably much fitter than what I was as well. Or I am right now. I'm thinking, damn, this is all, wow, you know, this is the kind of like the familiar to the kind of Jackie Chan movies that I kind of grew up watching. #34 is Lethal Weapon 2, 1989, a US movie directed by Richard Donner, starring Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Joe Pesci, and Patsy Kensit. Yep, this is the sequel to the surprise box office smash Lethal Weapon from 1987. This 1989 sequel sees Mel Gibson and Danny Glover return as Riggs and Murtaugh, who uncover a gold smuggling ring, which eventually leads to kind of like more crimes that are actually being kind of orchestrated by South African baddies or diplomats, diplomatic immunity. And in the midst of this, a shady accountant named Leo Getz, played by Joe Pesci, gets involved as a witness, where they would have to protect him, much to their dismay. And at the same time, Riggs gets involved with a pretty South African secretary working in the at the embassy, who's unknowingly kind of involved with what the bad guys are doing, including other illegal activities, but using diplomatic immunity as a way of getting away with it. Who's of course played by Patsy Kensit, who, yeah, became everyone's dream girl at one point. Yeah, this was actually a great sequel. I mean, in contrast to the original Lethal Weapon, which is a great kind of gritty, kind of darker kind of film, darker action movie. It had kind of like bits of like dark humor, but this one was slightly more broader. It was a lot funnier than the first Lethal Weapon movie. I mean, it had some great action sequences. The fact that it opens up with a really cool kind of car chase. You know, and there's a lot of kind of like action, and this, I mean, even the story seems a bit more kind of, it gives more background into the story of like Martin Riggs' character, and the reason why he's like, his kind of like the tragedy that kind of affected his character even in the first movie, and why he was kind of this person who's seen as on edge. And for Joe Pesci, definitely was absolutely hilarious. I mean, the best scene in this movie, apart from some of the great action movies and some of the scenes and some of the one-liners, it's just been revoked. I would say was when you see Murtaugh and Leo Getz, when they both go to the South African embassy, because this was made during the time when there was a lot of tension in terms of like apartheid South Africa. And there was a lot of protest behind it. But even in the first Lethal Weapon movie, because when you'd see at the end where Gary Busey's Mr. Joshua storms the Murtaugh residence, you'd see like a end apartheid now kind of like poster in the background, which apparently triggered off a lot of hate from far-right groups in America. Yeah, and they kind of like were giving death threats to Joel Silver, who was the producer. Coincidentally, this is also released, well, more or less, this movie was also kind of like promoted in another Joel Silver produced sequel, which was Die Hard 2. On one of the scenes in the airport, you'd see actually there was a poster of Lethal Weapon 2 when I think it's an old lady who was reading a magazine. And yeah, I thought, hey, why not, you know, free promotion for a great movie. And this was pretty good. I mean, okay, the South African accents were pretty broad and a bit too kind of like comicky at times, but still, it's just great movie. I mean, for me, Lethal Weapon definitely hands down is probably one of my favorite like action franchises of all time. I mean, all four of the movies I just absolutely love, but I mean, for me, I mean, Lethal Weapon 2 definitely is like one of my favorites in that series. Wow, the whole series is. I love it. 33 is Commando, 1985, a US movie directed by Mark L. Lester, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Vernon Wells, Ray Dawn Chong, and Alyssa Milano. Film stars Arnold as a retired special forces guy called John Matrix, who's kind of living in some quiet, remote cabin with his daughter, and you know, living the dad life, where tragedy strikes, where an enemy from his past decides to kidnap his daughter, and where a former team member of his turned mercenary called Bennett, played by Vernon Wells, is bitter and out for revenge. So they kidnap his daughter, and they're kind of forcing Arnie's character John Matrix to assassinate a South American president who's a friend, to help a former dictator to take over and resume his regime. But that doesn't go to plan for the bad guys, as John Matrix decides to kind of, well, cause chaos, go on a rampage, take names and kick ass, and also gets involved with a pretty flight attendant played by Ray Dawn Chong, and of course his daughter Jenny, which is played by a young child actress, Alyssa Milano, who's kind of banking on her dad to save her, but also tries to kind of escape herself. Well, this movie itself is just more as quintessential 80s action cinema. These are the kind of films that what made the 80s action movies stand out. There was really little in terms of like plot and character development and whatnot, but it was just made for like just an entertaining, fast-paced, just explosive action movie. I mean, although some of the scenes might seem quite silly, especially where you can see like at the end where Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually at the mansion or the villa of the villain, of this dictator, who's kind of like got all these soldiers who just really don't know how to shoot one guy, and you can see some of these extras that were actually used in more than one take. They were killed more than once. It's just with like funny, like really cartoonish disguises, but it's just still an awesome movie, just full of explosions, great one-liners, and a lot of just pure awesomeness. And even some of the great one-liners like you scared mother, this green beret is gonna kick your big ass. I eat green berets for breakfast, and right now I am very hungry. Just a very quotable, silly action movie, but it's just so much fun. '32, we have Face Off, 1997, US, directed by John Woo, starring John Travolta, Nicolas Cage, John Allen, and Gina Gershon. Well, yeah, this was John Woo's third movie as a director in Hollywood, and it stars Travolta as FBI agent Sean Archer, who's after international terrorist Castor Troy, played by Nicolas Cage, who ends up in a coma after an altercation, and in order to find out where a bomb is left, then Sean Archer must become Castor Troy by taking off his face, putting on him, getting this kind of like surgery done to kind of look more or less similar to him and to mimic his mannerisms and voice. But what happens is that Castor Troy wakes up, kills everyone who knows about the mission, resumes Sean Archer's identity, and then this kind of plays into his home life, and where at the same time we see Sean Archer, who's actually kind of embodying Castor Troy, decides to kind of take, just go on a rampage to take his nemesis down. And yeah, well, this movie, it was like finally the first time that John Woo had actually been given full creative control on a Hollywood movie, especially after his first movie, Hard Target, which was in the US, which kind of like was very restricted. He had either Universal trying to kind of just hold him down, and at the same time he had Jean-Claude Van Damme wanting to kind of like make his own version, and then just a lot of mess involved. He kind of felt that he was restricted. But then after he did his second Hollywood movie, which was Broken Arrow in 1996 or 95, I think it was, can't remember which year that was right about that time, 95, 96, but that was a very studio safe movie. I mean, it's not as violent, and it wasn't kind of like gruesome or like just normal fare. But it was a success. I mean, it's not a bad movie. The first time that the studios actually decided, we're confident that he can actually make good action movies, and this time he got like less restriction, and he made this really kind of like very kind of fast-paced and energetic action movie, just filled to the brim with explosions, shootouts, slow-mo doves, and even some kind of like homages to his movie The Killer. In some of the scenes, it was very kind of similar. There was even a kind of exchange in a church, and there's also like Mexican standoffs, which pretty much became a John Woo trademark, where both characters just pointing a gun at one another, and that was kind of like, it's always been kind of a thing that it became a John Woo mannerism. I mean, it's like just like where when it comes to Martin Scorsese, he has his kind of like tracking shots and voiceovers, and really interesting voiceovers, where John Woo's it was the standoff and doves and slow-mo and two guns being blasted. Yeah, that's kind of like more of a John Woo thing. But definitely, I mean, this was, I would say, by far his best Hollywood movie to date. I mean, everything else he's done, well, his last two Hollywood movies, I wouldn't really kind of say anything about them. But that was actually great, and I thought it was kind of like it kind of showed potential that John Woo could still be a big name in Hollywood. And the fact that he kind of like eventually went on to direct like his most successful film to date, which was Mission Impossible 2, just shows that this guy has a lot of potential, and studios can kind of like have faith in him. '31, finally, is A Better Tomorrow 2. 1987, Hong Kong, directed by John Woo. Another John Woo movie, yes, this time starring Chow Yun-fat, T. Lung, Leslie Cheung, and Dean Shek, amongst others. This is a follow-up to his breakthrough hit, A Better Tomorrow, where you see the events unfold after the first movie, how the characters Kit, who's now a fully fledged police officer, played by Leslie Cheung, who's kind of gone undercover to investigate a potential a former reformed gangster, played by Dean Shek, known as Uncle Lung. or fourth uncle that says up. Yeah, I'm sure that's called him says up, meaning fourth uncle. So he's like an elder in the triads formally, and his brother Sung Shi Ho, played by T. is let out of prison to go undercover to investigate the same person. But then at the same time, he's trying to get his brother out. But then things go wrong, where Lung, aka fourth uncle, is framed for murder and eventually loses his mind after the grief of losing his daughter. In comes Ken, the twin brother of the character Mark, played again by Chow Yun-fat, who's a fast-talking former reformed gangster who's now running a restaurant in New York. And he's having who has run-ins with the local mafiosos, and eventually starts taking care of a grieving Lung, and also decides to kind of help him kind of get back to how he was before, and to kind of like heal and become a better person. And then they decide to go and get revenge the John Woo way. Now, yeah, this film, when looking at it, it was quite a mess when it was being made, because John Woo was kind of like being kind of, again, he was the director of the movie, but yet Choi Hark, who is the producer, who's also a respected filmmaker, was also trying to kind of like have more control of the movie and was directing it. And they both had their own versions, where Choi Hark's version was more focused upon Chow Yun-fat and Dean Shik's character, whereas John Woo's version was more focused on the T. Lung and Leslie Chung characters. And this is when things kind of went a bit too long, where the cut that they presented was really long. So it was almost like in excess of about nearly 3.5 to 4 hours. They'd actually had to trim it down using clips from both versions, and that was what it is. And then even John Woo himself had said that he doesn't really kind of like claim A Better Tomorrow to be one of his movies. But overall, as hokey as some of the things in this movie might be, but it's just such an awesome action movie. It's got some great shootouts. I mean, peppered throughout the movie, and even the way that it was shot was really good. The cinematography used in some of the scenes was good. I mean, you even got that iconic "eat the fucking rice" scene with Chow Yun-fat, and it was actually pretty good. And even like the whole kind of the scene with Leslie Chung when they used that song. At the time when his daughter's born, and like that whole kind of like see the build up towards the final kind of like confrontation and the final shootout is just an absolute ballistically batshit crazy, full of blood, bullets, explosions, and just loads and loads of like carnage. It was like that was kind of like that itself is quintessential John Woo to me. I mean, that was just him kind of going off the rails, like, hell yeah, I'm gonna make like I'm not having a great time making this movie, I'm just gonna make an awesome action shootout at the end. And I thought, wow, this is just absolutely awesome. And for me, that was one of the standouts. But the other standout shootout for me was definitely in the hotel where, the motel where Ken is staying with Uncle Rum, and they decide and is kind of like fending off some mafiosos. It's definitely great. Like, this is definitely, when it comes to an action movie, it's not something that's gonna like change your life in any way, but it's definitely so entertaining. I can see why someone like Quentin Tarantino is so kind of like obsessed with this movie. He's absolutely kind of like fascinated by like what this movie is, and even one of the clips in this movie was also featured in Tony Scott's True Romance, where you'd see them actually watching this movie on Patricia Arquette's actually watching this movie in Christian Slater's apartment. I guess that was my fourth installment of my top 50 action movies. Again, I'm not stopping at 250. I want to get to 500 now, because this is kind of like getting a bit more exciting. There's more of you. The fact that I'm getting more and more kind of like people watching my stuff, it means so much. Again, you can follow me on Instagram as well. Check out my other videos too. And again, let me know who's your favorite action filmmaker, and I will be picking out a random person. And because considering a lot of the stuff that I have got is region 2, so preferably I would say it's more beneficial if you're actually based in the UK. This was Sid. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.